In this video I'm going to demonstrate the Grunge Photoshop action. So this is the photo I'll use to demonstrate the effect. Going to play the action, and the action will create all these effects around the area that you define in the photo. So I'll click through a few more examples that I have now. Went from that to that. And everything remains layered, and so it's easy to move all the elements around. You can duplicate them to make it more detailed, and I'll show you how you can change the color of all of these splashes. And lastly, that to that. Okay, I'll close these down and start from scratch. Okay, so here's my photo, and a few things we just need to check off before you run the action. It's just to ensure that you get no errors. So firstly, look into your layer panel, and your photo layer must look identical to this. It should say background and have the lock symbol. So for those of you who have opened up a photo and it doesn't look identical to that, I'll just set this up. So say I just open up my photo and it's called layer 1. What you need to do is go to layer, new, background from layer. So you only need to do that step if it doesn't look identical to that when you open up your photo. Okay, so still in the layer panel, head on up to this top right hand corner icon and go to panel options. Right down the bottom here, make sure add copy to copied layers and groups is selected. Next, go to image mode and make sure in RGB color mode and 8 bits a channel is ticked. Still in image, go to image size. Just ensure you're using a high resolution photo. I found the best range for this photo effect is between 2500 to 3500 pixels. Of course you can go lower than that, but I've just found through all my testing that that achieves the best results. So go for high resolution photos and you'll be fine. Cancel on that. So what I want to do now is load up the actions panel. So go to window, actions, and it will pop up here. I need to load my action. Just go to this top icon here, go to load actions, select Grunge.ATN, it will pop up here. Now I need to load the brushes that came with the download. They're essential to making this action work. So to load the brushes, you just hit B on the keyboard, and if I right click anywhere on the canvas, you can see there's my brushes there, but they're all the default standard Photoshop brushes, so I want to replace all these. So hit this cog icon here and go to replace brushes. Select Grunge brushes.abr, and here's the brushes that came with the download, which create all the effects for us. So I'll just get rid of that. Now what we need to do is create a new layer, and with that layer we're going to highlight the area on the photo that we want to apply all the effects to and around. So create a new layer, go layer, new, layer, new layer. And this must be called brush, all in lowercase, otherwise the action won't work, so click OK. Now with the brush layer selected, you must select the brush layer, hit B on the keyboard, get your brushes back out, and you can select the soft brush that came with the in the brushes here. So you can either pick any colour. You can either brush over your photo as a way of highlighting it, or I'll just delete that, or you could use other tools like the lasso tool, to draw around your subject. However you want to highlight your photo, just do it that way. So I'm just going to open a Photoshop file where I've already highlighted him. Where is it? This one here. So you can see that I've just done a pretty rough job. I've just brushed around my subject, so you can see that there, my brush layer. Okay, now very important, before you run the action, if you hit B on the keyboard again to get your brush out, make sure that the brush opacity is set to 100%. It must be set to 100%. If it's around 50%, 60, whatever, the action will run into errors. It needs that full opacity for it to work. And another good habit to get into before running any action is to go to Edit, Purge, All. That'll just erase any history that's banked up in Photoshop, because from my experience with actions, you can occasionally run into errors when there shouldn't be any errors, and that is caused by too much history banked up that can affect the playback of actions. Okay, so we're actually all ready to go now. That's all you need to do to set up the file. I'm just going to play the action now, so you're just going to click Grunge and then click play. If you want to get an idea of how much time the action has left to play back, you twirl this open here and you can see all the steps there. So when the action's playing along, this scroll bar will go down, so you can keep checking back on Photoshop to see how much time it's got left. But it should take between 1 and 2 minutes to play back. So I'll click play now, and I'm just going to fast forward the video and get to the result. So the action's finished, and this is the default result that I got. So I'm just going to collapse the actions panel and go into the layer panel now. So firstly, you want to collapse all these folders here, so everything's much neater. So to do that, just with the Grunge folder that should be already selected, hold down Control, Alt, or Command Option and click on that folder arrow. That will just clean up all the folders and layers for us. Okay, so I've left the brush layer still hanging around at the top here. Every time we run the action, even if I run it again with this same brushed area, the textures are going to look different every time. So it's completely randomized. So if you want to try for a few different results, then save this file out, run the action again, save that one out, do it 2 or 3 times, and then open up each Photoshop file to see which default sort of result you like the best. But I'll show you now how you can move all the layers around anyway and do lots of things with the colors. So let's get into it. So here's the Grunge folder. It's got everything inside. If you turn it off, flick back to your normal photo. So the top 3 ones in here in purple, overall contrast, contrast 2, and saturation. These are just some adjustment layers to affect like the overall contrast of the design and saturation. So with this one here, if you double click on it, you'll see that I've just set up 3 handles here. You can grab these handles and play around with that if you want to adjust the brightness. So this handle here will affect the shadows. This one in here will sort of handle the mid-tones, and then this one here the highlights. So you can play around with that. This layer here, overall contrast 2, it works in a slightly different way. I've got in brackets here opacity. So if you look at the default opacity of this layer, it's set at 28%. So if I just click, hold and drag on that word opacity, I'll drag it to the right, bring it to 100%, left to 0, excuse me. So the way I like to use this is just start at 0 and drag to the right slowly to get to a point where you think the contrast levels are good. So around 23%, it's pretty good. Overall saturation, if you double click on this one, drag this saturation handle if you want to crank up the saturation of all the colors. You can also reduce it, black and white, just like that. Reveal normal photo, and I've got in brackets brush mask. This layer is important particularly for people as your subjects. If you want to say clear up the face, anywhere of your photo that you want to revert more back to the original look of your photo without any of the effects. So if you select the mask, and if I just hit B on the keyboard and I'll right click over the canvas and I'll get my soft brush, if I just grab a white brush here, if I brush white into this layer mask, that will reveal this layer. So currently if I just turn this layer on and off, it does nothing. It's because I'm hiding it with this mask. If I hold down shift, click on this mask to temporarily disable it, you'll see that all that is, that layer is our original cutout. The area that we brushed, let's put that on a separate layer. So now with this mask, I can brush white to reveal the original photo. See, so looking at, I'll just undo that. Oops. Looking at this design, there's a bit of texture over my subject's face that I don't want. So, and maybe a little bit of glow. So I just brush there, and it kind of just overwrites everything and reveals the original photo. But what I like to do is, I don't want that to be so heavily contrasted between the original photo and the photo with all the effects applied. So what I'll do, I'll just select the layer opacity and just lower the opacity down of that layer a little bit, and it starts to blend back with the original design with all the effects applied to it. So I'll bring this opacity to 0, all the effects 100. So you can sort of just drag that down to find a good balance. So, you know, that's pretty good around there. So my face is still really clear. I've removed most of the texture. So yeah, so that's a very important layer to use for revealing the areas in your photo that you want to make stand out a lot more, to be much clearer. Glows, if I turn this folder on and off, you can see clearly what that does. So if you run the action and the glows are too intense, there's glows over your subject's face or whatever, firstly you can just adjust the folder opacity like that. You can lower it down if it's too intense. You can turn it off completely if you don't want them. If you go inside, I've got 2 layers here, glow 1 and glow 2, and then 2 adjustment layers where you can change the color. So glow 1, if I turn that on and off, that's the real intense one. Glow 2 is much softer and it's a much wider glow, so they kind of work together. But you can adjust the opacity of this one separately. I can just lower that one down. You can turn that one off, and then glow 2. Glow 2's default opacity is at 50%, so you can turn it up to 100%, just like that. You might just want to use that one, but I'll just revert all of this. So I want to show you the colors, how to change that. So you can just select these glow 1 color, double click, and drag this hue handle around. You can actually recolor those glows really easily, just like that. So I'm just going to change it there a bit. You can see the saturation's way up by default. That's what helps sort of bring the glows out a lot more. You know, you can do the same with this one as well. Drag this hand around to get a glow combination that you like. If you want the glows to be more intense, just duplicate the entire folder. So if I'll just select the glows folder and hit Control J or Command J, duplicate it, and they're much more intense now. So if you want to balance, if you don't want 100% that, you could reduce the opacity down. I'll put it to 0, slowly drag it up, so something like that. You could also do other things like, if I'll bring it up to 100%. If I, with the folder selected, just hit Control E or Command E, I'll flatten that folder onto one layer. I'll set the blend mode back to Add. So now what I've got there, I've got all those glows on one layer, so you can see that there. So you can do some cool things like just move those, offset those glows a bit. I'll zoom out, you scale them up, you know, rotate them, do some cool things like that. And then you could change the color with this layer separately. I just hit Control or Command U, and again play around with that hue slider so you get crazy with the colors. I'll just delete that, it's probably a bit too much for this design. Let me just check. I'll just bring this back up. I think that'll do. Okay, so this folder here, photo, if I turn this on and off, you can see how his face is slightly visible there. That's because of this layer here where we brushed on the original photo. But if I hide that, you can see that there. So without the photo layer folder on, you can see all the textures there, but the photo folder has our photo inside, so let's go in, take a look. So down the bottom here is the base photo. So if I turn that on and off, you can see that fills in that area with our main photo. But there's a few other layers here that sort of affect the appearance of the photo. So if I turn this one on and off, add strong contrast, you can see this layer really makes it pop, but If you turn it off, it gives it a much softer look, so you might prefer to go with that really soft look there. But you can of course create a balance, so add strong contrast if it's too strong. The default opacity is at 60%. You can crank it up to 100 if you want stronger, or 0 and start dragging up to the right. Something you like. Fill photo edges. By default, what I've done with this action is about, I think from memory, it was about 30 pixels inward from the edges of the area that you brushed. I've made it blend with the background textures, so you can see around this jumper there how it's sort of faded away into the textures behind. So this layer here, fill photo edges, if you turn that on, it just fills in those edges a bit more, just like that. So it can just make your subject look a bit more prominent, but you might prefer it with that off. I had this layer here I forgot to talk about, base photo brightness. If you double click on this, just play around with these curve handles, you can adjust the brightness of your photo, the base photo. Okay, and what I like to do with this folder is I'll turn it on and off, like that, and I'll take a look around the design and I'll think what are some areas that I can erase that sort of will look really cool blended in with the background. Like maybe I want to remove his arm here and just have that blend into the background texture. So what I'll do, I'll just select the mask, grab a black brush because I want to remove it, hit B, get my brush out. If I start brushing there, you can see I just remove that. So it gives your design a much more of an abstract look. So what I could do, I could just go in to his pants here, erase that, socks, so you can get really specific on the areas that you want to blend in with the background, which is really cool. Like that. I'll turn this back on. Okay. Now, lines, I'll turn this folder on and off. So if you turn that one off, all you're really left with is these paint sort of splattered textures all around your subject. But with the lines on, adds a lot more detail, as you can see there. So again, if you prefer some areas with no lines at all, use the folder mask to erase the lines that you don't want. So I'll go inside, and this layer here, overall texture colors, if I double click on this one, and if I drag the saturation up, you can affect, actually what I might do, I'll make sure when I upload this file that I've moved this up above the lines folder, so it's when you get the action it'll be above the lines folder. So I'll start that again. So this one will be here, overall textures color. So yeah, you double click on this and you can adjust the saturation of all those textures below, which is really cool. Or you could drag this hue slider around to quickly randomize the colors of all those textures. So like that, or you could make it all one color. You could go colorize, tick this box here, and that will recolor all those elements below your photo. Okay, I'll undo that, go back to the default. Okay, so back to the lines folder. Whoops, go inside here, and there's 4 lines layers here, and then 4 layers above where you can quickly recolor the lines. Okay, so lines 1 is hasn't really shown too much on this photo, but it's the big thick white lines that you'll see run around the edges of your photo. So when you run the action and you've seen all these big thick white lines everywhere, that's this layer here, lines 1. Okay, so again that's got a mask on it. If you want to just erase it in areas, do that. You could double click on this box here and add a new color. So if you look at your socks there, you can recolor those lines, make that blue. So lines 2, all those squiggly sort of round lines, you could again change the color. I like to always play around with the colors, just you never know if something could look better. I think green is pretty cool. or white. Is that better? And in between. No, I'll just leave it. So yeah, that's layer. That's that layer. If you want more lines, you can just hold down Alt or Option on the Mac, drag that down, make a copy, move that around, just like that. So I've added a ton more lines now. If you want to add that color control, select lines to color, hold down Alt or Option, drag that down, and then with drag it down above the lines to copy. And if you hold down Alt or Option and move your mouse between these two layers, you'll see that little white box with the arrow. Click that, it'll clip it so that it only affects the layer below. So now I can double click on this box and then add a new color to all those new lines, just like that. But I'm going to delete those. So lines 3 are those black wavy lines hanging out the edges of the design. So you can see that there if I turn that on and off. So you can change the color of that one. Lines 4 is a scratchy texture that sort of sits over the bulk of the design. Change the color of that as well. Excuse me. Okay. Textures, if I turn that on and off, that really houses most of the effects. So we'll go inside here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different texture layers. So texture 1 is just well, you can see that there. You can randomize the color. Each one of these layers has a color control above it, so don't feel you're locked into the default colors of what the action produces. The way the action works is that it takes the colors, as you can see from your cutout, the area that we brushed, and it sort of spreads those colors out over all the elements around it, so it gives it the appearance that the colors sort of bleeding out onto all the textures. But you know, this one here, I can just double click on that texture 1 color, and you know, I can color that part individually and crank up the saturation. So now I've got like really bright sort of paint splotches. Okay, so you can get really creative with that. What the hell, let's just leave it on purple on that there. So moving on down, so texture 1A by default I have turned off. It is similar to texture 1. If I turn that on, it just adds a few more random blotches of paint and stuff. So you can turn that one on if you want. Texture 2 is that one there. So again, I could double click on the color. The saturation of this one's up quite high, so see that there. Might actually reset this, it's probably distracting me a bit, like those original colors. Okay, back here, yeah, you can change the color of that, easy enough. That's cool. And quickly flick these layers on and off, because you never know, like you might prefer the design with that off. You don't need to have it so intense with all these effects everywhere. Texture 3, so it just fills in bulk of that area. Texture 4, so what I've done with texture 4, you'll see that there's a mask with a big cross through it, so I've temporarily disabled it. So if you just click on that mask, it activates it. Now if I hold down shift and click on it again, it'll disable it. So you can see as I do that on and off, that I've basically just given you that as an option. You can either have this area, this main texture area, quite strongly filled in, or if you turn that mask off, you'll see that it removes most of it. So we've got a lot more of that stringy paint texture visible. So go between holding down shift and clicking on that mask and turning it off. See what you prefer. Okay, I think that looks, no, I'll just leave it off like that. Texture 5 is very subtle, just tiny little paint drops around the far edges. By default, the opacity of that lays at 30%. I can crank that up to 100 if you want to have that more visible. Okay, so that's the textures. Again, if you want to go more crazy with the textures, duplicate the entire folder, Control J, and then jump inside and start moving them all around. Vignette, so yeah, by default I've added a vignette around the edges of the design. You see that there. If you want to have it more prominent, grab that opacity again and boost that up. Okay, so let's leave it there. Background sketch. Now this particular photo hasn't generated a background sketch because the default photo, there's no real elements behind him to trace around. But yeah, what this layer will do is, you know, say if there were things behind him, you would see a soft outline like a pencil sketch around them. So that's what that layer will do. Background texture, if I turn that on and off, so you can see that just overlays a soft grungy texture over the background to help the design sort of come together. Background color, you can just double click on this box and grab a new color for the background if you want to do that. If you want all the elements to sit on top of your original photo background, turn off this layer. And so now it sits on top of our original photo, which I think looks better with this particular photo. But by default, just remember that I've replaced your background with this background color layer. And you can do creative things like, you know, if I select the mask for this layer, and if I hit G to get the gradient tool out, set this from black to transparent, and I'll just drag a line there. So what I can do now is that I've just masked out the bottom of this layer, so then it falls down onto our background layer. So, you know, if I change that, you can see that there. So you can get creative that way, but I think I prefer this with this off. Okay, so that's really all there is to it. So the key with this action is just to play around with all the layers and, you know, play around with the colors, get something you think looks really cool. So what I'll do now is that I'll open up another design, and an image that I know requires just a little bit of customization. So I'm going to show you sort of the process I'll go through to going from the default result to something that I think looks much better than the default result. So I'll open that up now. So now I have opened this example that I want to make some customizations to. This is just the default result. So you know, looking at this design, there's definitely too much glow around his chest. I want to make his face much more prominent and do a few things to the textures and stuff. So firstly, I'm just Control Alt Command Option again on Mac and click on that forward arrow to collapse all the layers. So I'll just hide that Grunge folder for a sec. So that was my default photo. I've just extended the canvas out a bit to give me a bit more room. There's the area that I brushed. Just traced around him like that. Okay, so I'll go inside and looking at this. Firstly, what I'm going to do is just hide the glows layer and start from here. I'm noticing that I'll go inside the photo folder, sorry, and I'm just going to tone down the contrast here. And what I'm going to do now is reveal his face. So I'm going to go reveal normal photo and hit B on the keyboard and grab a white brush and brush over his face here. And again, I'm just going to lower the opacity of this to sort of blend with the background textures a bit. Okay, I'm going to now turn the photo folder on and off. I just want to take a look around the design and see where I can blend the original photo with the textures. So I'm just going to grab a black brush. I'm going to brush away his legs here, a little bit on his shorts, a little bit around the arms, like that. Now I'm going to turn the glows back on, and what I might do is just knock down the opacity like that, and I'm just going to brush away the glows, use the mask here. I'm going to brush away the glows on his chest, a little bit on his arms. I'm going to duplicate the entire glows folder. I'm going to brush away this area. I'm going to knock down the opacity of this layer, this folder. just like that. Okay, I'm going to just play around with the colours here. See if I can find more of a reddish tone. I have to settle for something like this. Brush away glows here. Okay, so I just added some glows to his arms. What I might check out now is the lines folder. I'm going to turn lines 1 off. Don't think this needs it. I'm just going to check out moving the lines folder above the photo folder. So now I've got the lines sort of sitting on top of my subject, but it's not going to intersect with the face because I've overridden all that with this layer here. So that's looking pretty cool. Overall saturation, might check out this contrast. Just like that. I'm just going to quickly shoot down the background colour and go for a grey. Like that. Now I'm going to jump into the textures folder and play around with the colours of some of these. Saturation, I'll bring that down. I think the colours are pretty good as is. I might try That's pretty good. I'll just add some colour to these lines and see if it looks any better. Change these to red. Yellow is pretty cool. These black lines, I'll try white, red, yellow is probably a bit too much, probably leave it at black. Let's have a look. Textures, vignette, I think I'll leave that. So you can see here the background sketch layer, how it's drawn like this border around the design. It's because if the original photo there, so it's traced a line around that. So that's what I was trying to explain before with the background sketch, that it'll sketch around any details seen in the background. As you can see some little circles and lines. It's picked up from here. So I'm going to leave that on because that looks pretty cool. So where am I? Background color, background texture. I'll turn the opacity of that up. See if that off. I'll just keep it just a little bit on. Don't forget you can move this texture around if you want. I can move that over there. I'm going to duplicate this close folder again, see what that looks like. Try this one. There we go. So I'm much happier with that than the default result, and you know, it was just a couple minutes of playing around, just experimenting with what the layers and folders have to offer, and you know, I've gone from that to that in just, you know, a couple minutes work. Okay, so that's it. If you have any issues or questions about the action, just send me an email. But if not, yeah, have fun using the action. Thanks.